Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome from Toronto, Ontario, Douglas, Wyoming, and West Haven, Utah. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Welcome back to Beyond the Wild. And this is like the first time in months. So we apologize that we've been missing a little bit this fall, but the fall, as you all know, is our busiest time of the year, and trying to break away and find time that the three of us can have a conversation is almost impossible. We almost didn't get to do that tonight. Actually, we didn't think we were going to get to do that tonight. We thought it was just going to be Mark and I and our guest, which we'll introduce in just one second. But Jason made it back from his location photographing sheep, and we'll talk about all that later on. Got lots to talk about. Lots and lots to talk about. But tonight, we're bringing you somebody that we've followed for a few years, actually, from the Inside Passage of Alaska. Mary Jackal.
Nailed it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us tonight. So on Instagram, we'll do this again at the end, but on Instagram, yes, you're known as Mary's Mark. Correct?
Yep.
Where did that come from?
That came from, a while back when I started a small photography business back in Florida. I was living there for a while, and I thought, hey, I'd love to figure out a way to inspire people. In the same way that you guys are with your podcast, right? Get people really excited about the world around them and the passion that they might have for photography. So that's where it came from. Make your mark on the world. And then it just kind of stuck, and here it is today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously the majority of the eye-catching stuff from your page is just the beauty of the Inside Passage and the marine wildlife that you have encounters with every day. What made you transition from Florida to Alaska?
I feel like I've been kind of a wanderer for a while. So I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania, Chicago, all the way down to Florida, back to Pennsylvania, and then Juneau, Alaska. I would say it has a lot to do with my husband. So there is that. But we had spent some time in Petersburg, Alaska for a while, and it was just an epic, gorgeous location. It's really known for commercial fishing. So there was a lot of the huge commercial fishing boats. If you guys have ever watched Deadliest Catch, you've probably seen some of them. And then Juneau was one of the locations that had a really great airport. When you think about Alaska and how easy it is to fly in and out of, there's really 3 locations that have decent-sized airports where they have reliable planes going in and out. So for us, it was either going to be Fairbanks, Anchorage, or Juneau. Ended up in Juneau. Love the fishing element as well. So I know I don't really post about it too much, but we do a lot of halibut and salmon fishing throughout the whole summer. So that's actually one of the reasons why I'm on the water a lot. But that is the long-winded way of saying that's how I got up to Juneau, because we needed to make sure that there was kind of jet service back to the lower 48, whether it was for work, professional work, or whether that was just for, seeing relatives and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Have you guys been up here?
Not to Juneau, not yet. I haven't.
Not yet? Okay, good. I like the words "not yet."
Yeah. Been to Alaska so many times, but never to the state capital, right?
Juneau, you nailed it. Yep.
Being as large as Anchorage, it's the state capital.
It is. It is. You can only get here by plane or ship or birth canal, right? So you're born here.
That's great. Took me a minute to catch that. I'm like, what? What's
It usually does, but
what a cool place to live, to be, everything is accessible by road, people think, right? And to have a significant city, state capital, not accessible by road. How unusual is that?
Pretty unusual, I would say. But it's funny because you get people who are like, wait a minute, are you moving around by sled dogs up here or something like that, right? Which it seems kind of silly because we do have a Costco and a McDonald's and we do have a Starbucks and things like that. So it is very developed. So, yeah, it's a great spot.
30, almost 32,000 people. Significant. And state capital would have to be. But that's, amazing. And my answer is same as Ron's, not yet.
Not yet. Well, I hope you guys can come up in the summer and maybe come out photographing.
It'd be amazing to see it.
Yeah.
Is that an invite?
It is. It absolutely is. Please do. I think you'd love it.
That'd be amazing.
I might be close next year, but it'll be down just in northern BC right there on the coast. But
okay. Yeah.
It's possible.
You're already that close. You should come up all the way then.
Might as well, right?
Yeah, I might as
If you guys can run me south, that'll work. Water taxi service.
Oh, yeah. The Alaska Marine Highway.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Inside Passage. I mean, growing up in Florida, or not growing up necessarily, but living in Florida, were you on the coast there as well?
I was. I've always been attracted to water, and even in Chicago, lived right on Lake Michigan, and when I was in Erie, lived right on Lake Erie, and then when I was in Pittsburgh, right on the Three Rivers there. So always been attracted to water, but obviously the Inside Passage here is pretty darn special. I feel like a lot of the magic happens on the water. So there are certain things you can only see from the water, really, or obviously the sky, but things like glaciers that you can see, right? There's not a road that goes by them. So up here, the waterways are really a way of moving around. So a lot of people have liveaboards or sailboats or any type of boat, so they can move from small city to small city, or maybe I should call them port towns, not cities. But the magic is really in the wildlife for me personally. So you can imagine the humpbacks start coming back up, and almost everything follows the herring, which follows the salmon. Or actually flipped, I should say. The salmon follow the herring, which then bring in the orcas. And then you always have the sea lions, the seals. So a lot of the water wildlife or the aquatic wildlife is really something that just speaks to me a lot.
Okay, so this is a curiosity of mine.
Yeah.
Do you guys get like the fin whales, bowheads, and gray whales, or do they go out like on the other side of the island, open ocean?
You nailed it, secondary, right? So it's not in here in Southeast Alaska, but more towards the outside. Yeah.
Okay.
It would be super cool if it did, if they all did, but unfortunately, no.
Yeah. Nice. So what is your favorite? Well, hold on.
Okay.
I'm going to back up. We're going to go back to an old question.
Oh, okay.
I was going to ask you what your favorite species was, but I'm going to ask you what your favorite ever outdoor experience was. You've been an outdoors person, I'm assuming, for quite some time, being drawn to the water.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite ever outdoor experience?
Man, that's a tough one. There's so many. I feel like there's anything from catching a 197-pound halibut, which is just an epic fish of a lifetime for me. And the way that fish came up was incredible. It has really nothing to do with photography. So I'll kind of flip that switch and say probably over the years, I've gotten better at flying my drone off of a boat. And to do that, it's a bit tough for me personally, just because I probably don't have as much experience as I need to. But when I can make it happen, when the conditions are right and I'm willing to take that chance, you get to see the wildlife in such a different way. So when you're flying super high and you look down and you can see the formations that orcas are making in the water, from the water level or from sea level, you look out and you see them come up for air, right? And their dorsal fins coming up, which is absolutely incredible. But when you're up above them, you can see that they're in formation. And that moment when you realize they're not just like all on top of each other as a pod going through, they're literally purposeful. You're like, wait a minute, this is just so much more kind of than what I've ever thought could be. So yeah, I'd say that was probably one of my number one moments, just realizing that these animals are just so much more than when I even had thought they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I flew one in Svalbard, Norway, and I was pretty confident. But
you were no. You were very confident.
I was very confident.
I mean, I actually looked at you and you were flying that thing. I was like, "Have you done this before?" And you're like, "Nope." You could have fooled me.
So here's why: is because it wasn't my drone.
Ah,
So I was supremely confident.
nice.
But no, we got some beluga footage, and I can see what you mean. It is a different experience because if you're watching them porpoise through the water, you get the backs, and maybe it's a little more intimate because you're closer at times. But it's special to look above and just get that little extra glimpse into the world. Because even Jacques Cousteau was eye level all the time. He never saw anything from above, especially back then, unless they did a helicopter shot, which was pretty rare. But it is special. I agree with that, and I can see what the allure is. You're doing quite a bit of drone work now, right?
I am attempting to, but it's so hard, right? Because you're like, okay, I want to grab my actual camera and then drone and then wait, phone. Oh, wait, no, you're right. So you're just constantly and kind of changing the modes or the technical aspect of the camera. It's also tough too because you get mesmerized, right? So even just you being there in the moment, you're like, wait a minute, oh my gosh, they're going back down now. They're going back down now. Oh wait, now I got to get something else up, right? So it's just constant, and orcas, probably a bit like beluga whales, right? They're moving. It's not like they stop to like look at you, pose, or anything like that. So the one difference too for me when you're photographing something on land versus in the water is that they literally disappear under the water, which sounds ridiculous, but it wasn't until I was photographing moose in Anchorage that I was like, oh, the moose moved, but they walked and I could actually go follow them or go, set up for a separate shot because I knew where they were. But when a humpback goes underwater, I don't know where it's coming up next, right? So there's more ambiguity that you have to deal with in trying to get some of those different shots. So a very long-winded way of saying, yes, trying to dive more into drone photography and videography, but it is a bit tough and it does feel like a shuffle when you have those moments between cameras.
What drone do you use now?
It's literally just a DJI Mini.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah.
And how many drones have you lost any? Because I'm just imagining, it happens, right? It must.
Oh, yeah.
It must happen on a boat due to variables. Can you tell us anything like that? What's experiences you've had?
So I really hope that you did not just jinx me. So please knock on wood.
Oh, never mind.
I haven't lost one yet.
Oh, well, there you go. That's
I know, right? I was very close, though. Very, very close. So the biggest challenge is obviously the tide swings up here. So generally speaking, the tides around here can go 20 some feet. So they're pretty high. So it's very rare that we're at slack tide where the water's just not moving at all. And so because of that, you're generally not anchored at all. So you're constantly moving. There's typically some kind of wind element. If you've ever been on the water, there's usually some kind of wind. Plus the let's just say in this instance, the orcas are really moving fast. So I did have a drone go up once. I took off, was filming, and then trying to get it back. I swear to goodness, there was this huge gust of wind, and it was starting to happen, and it was my fault, right? I was just taking a bet that I could get up there, get down, get the boat back in the right location, that kind of thing. And I got to a spot where I was losing battery so quickly because of the wind that we grabbed the salmon net, which is this huge long net, and actually captured the drone, brought it back in. So it was not the smoothest by any means, but we didn't lose a drone in that instance, which is great. But it does make your heart, gives you palpitations for sure.
Oh yeah, I had a similar
boatload of
experience.
Challenges.
Yeah.
Similar experience, no net.
Oh yeah.
We
What
didn't have
happened?
a net.
Oh no.
I just got it back high enough, and somebody caught it. So, but I thought it was
It was a
done.
goner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're not thinking about it too, like you'll take off and it'll try to return back to that location. You're like, no, please don't. Like at all.
That's exactly
Cancel.
what happened, and I couldn't
Yeah.
get it to override, so I thought I was in trouble. But
Yeah.
fortunately, it worked out
Yes.
because it was great footage. But yeah, I can see the draw for sure with the drone on the water.
Oh yeah.
It's a great tool.
That's spectacular. I mean, the videos you have in that perspective, right? I mean, to be able to do it that easily, as far as it's that accessible, is yeah, it's wonderful to see, and you can see it on throughout your Instagram page, and it's all the different species too, right? Both the orcas and the humpbacks. Do you have any, as far as somebody who is thinking about doing not just drone work, but working from a boat, not being a static launch point to return point? Are there any tips that you could give that would help somebody with their drone that way? Like, would it be all manual? You would turn off the return to home, right? You'd have to rely on your own navigation of it, and not have it set up the automatic.
You're absolutely right, Mark. Yeah, that's number one. Everything is manual. So get comfortable taking off and landing, just in general, right? Just the baseline, how do you fly kind of situation. I think the other part is when you're landing. Taking off is fairly straightforward, but you do have to watch for, once you take off, the boat's moving. So if you don't take off high enough, you might hit the engine almost within a split second. Or if you don't take off out, like going away from the boat, then there's a chance the back of the boat, what's standing behind me, is actually going to hit it. So just making sure you're directionally aware, which sounds ridiculous, but it's not, because it can be very close in a matter of mere seconds of just taking off. For me, I always land in the back of the boat. So I'm fairly risk averse. I don't like taking off in terrible weather. I feel like there's some really confident folks out there who are probably like, you should totally do more, right? But that's just not me and how I operate. So when I land it, I have the drone back facing towards me, obviously, and then I'm landing it in the box, so the inside the gunnels of the boat. Which means the gunnels are kind of coming up around it, which means you don't have as much room. So what my husband does on the front of the boat is actually one of the more miraculous things, right? So he's trying to, using the part of the boat that tells you where you're moving and stuff, he's just trying to keep it in complete neutral, which is a lot when it's just a single motor engine, right? If you have bow thrusters or anything like that, it can be a little bit easier, but if we've just got a single engine, it's just a little personal boat. So to be able to just stay in neutral at the same time I'm bringing it down, it takes a lot of coordination between both of us. But again, I think that effort has enabled us to bring back, I mean, again, knock on wood, all the footage that we've gotten thus far. So it's a team effort. I guess that's again, probably a fairly roundabout answer, Mark, but hopefully that paints a bit of a picture.
Yeah, it does. I mean, even just thinking about the structure of the boat and being aware of that and getting off premises from it makes sense. And somebody doing it for the first time, if the boat's accelerating forward, might not think of that. So sure.
Just like anything else, there's pre-work too, right? So making sure that you have, because when you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's generally no service. So making sure you have all of your apps updated. I don't know if you've ever flown and then it's like, hey, software update. Just kidding. And no, you can't go anywhere until you do that, right? So just doing all the pre-work ahead of time to make sure you have, the adequate software updates and stuff done.
I learned that the hard way. I set up my drone. Was the first time I was going to fly it in a remote area of Newfoundland, and went to fly it, and it required a software update, and I had no service there. It was like, okay, everybody, thanks for coming.
Show's over, folks. Move along.
Yeah. You have to stay on top of that for sure. But I do love the vantage point for storytelling that drones give, and especially over water. like you're able to do is fantastic. And even places along the shore. I mean, what you can access, the glaciers along the coast there are just
Oh
phenomenal.
yeah.
And seeing them from the water is something, and seeing them calve and all of that activity. But to be able to fly over that colored ice with a drone is, I mean, its own experience, right?
Something different
Perspective.
entirely. Yeah.
It sounds like you two are gonna have to bring your drones up here then.
Be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Possibly. It's just having room in the luggage for everything else. It just,
Yeah, that's true.
depends.
Mine's a little one. Mine's
I
just
know mine's tiny.
But
249 grams.
Yeah.
the one thing the drone does do, and I know there's some regulations that you have to be conscious of
Oh
when
yeah.
you're flying a drone around marine wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that a drone does that you can't necessarily do without a $700,000 gimbal hanging off the side of your boat is it gives you a stable platform because you're off the water, so the water's not moving. You talked about the tides, but then you've got the tide, you got swell, depending on where you're at and the winds, that kind of thing. But it gives you that stable platform to shoot from. I was looking back at your January 21st. You posted a humpback that was going through some aquatic vegetation,
Oh
and
yeah.
then all of a sudden at the end, so you always see images of the bubble net feeding with the whales breaching the water, but to see it from above, it just tells the rest of that story and what's actually going on, and it's a pretty spectacular clip.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you bring that one up. Because when we were actually, I think it was early in the morning when we captured that one, we just saw a whale doing something. There was just some kind of rumbling, right? There was something going on, but he couldn't tell what it was. And it was doing it multiple times. And we would see a peck come up or just like its tail, but we weren't sure what was going on. So we threw it up. And that's when we noticed, oh my gosh, it's a bubble net, but it's only a single whale. Because typically it's a pod, right? It's not just one. We're like, are we actually seeing what we think we're seeing? And so later on, going back to service, we Googled it and we're like, oh, okay, it actually does happen. So it's one of those things where it just gives you a different vantage.
Yeah, that was a great sequence, and like I said, you get little pieces of the story with aquatic wildlife, just like you were talking about. They vanish, and
Yeah.
so you just get these little pieces, and to be able to put that together and sequence it and create a full lifeline type story, behavior story with aquatic wildlife or marine wildlife, I think it is a great opportunity, a great tool.
Cool. Yeah.
So for people that are thinking about what heights are acceptable or allowed for cetaceans like orca or humpback whale, how high is the drone above the surface? And I think, or what can you do that way? But I like the fact that when some of them are higher, like you alluded to earlier, you can see the whole pod sequence, right? So what do you do for that? Just to answer, I can perceive listeners thinking about that.
Yeah, what the height is. And I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I feel like is it 600? I
Feet.
can't remember. I can Google it and let you know. But
Or,
it's tough because obviously, I think actually I shouldn't say it's tough. I think one of the best parts about technology as it continues to get better is the ability for the cameras to zoom in. And then anything in post processing makes it even easier. But
Sure.
the drone that I have now the first drone I had, you couldn't zoom in at all. It was very basic. But this one I can at least kind of flip and then go into a more just a zoomed in view, which is super helpful. So that is probably one of the best parts of the newer technology that allows us to get closer without physically getting closer. You never want to break any type of natural path, natural behavior that an animal is taking ever. So that's also just a guiding principle that's something that I always try to keep in mind,
totally.
whether it's whatever animal. Yeah.
And battery life, what are we looking at? 20 minutes, 20 some minutes per flight? Is that roughly? I know there are variables like wind would would factor, as you said, on that. But why I ask is I'm picturing, as you talked about, when a whale dives, it's gone out of sight. They can dive for a length of time. It would make sense strategically to bring your drone back just because of the battery life, or do you at times wait for it to come back and surface?
I typically won't drone over any type of whale unless I understand what type of patterns it's doing. Because there are certain whales, I mean, this is not scientific, so take this with a grain of salt, but there are whales they're cruising. They're just moving through, they'll come up for air, and then they're kind of off. There are other whales you can tell that are feeding. And then there are whales that have a very rhythmic pattern. And those are the whales that I'm looking for if we're out there. Because those are the ones that have the more predictable. And so I will wait till I understand what the patterns are and then go up with the goal of, I believe this is where it's going to be. I believe this is where it should have come up, 10 minutes ago, whatever, in an effort to not drain the battery. And to your point, I think it's like 26 minutes or something technically, but it's never that long. And then I never drain it to all the way to the end. So every time I go up, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of footage, if that, and I'll just run it the whole time.
Okay. Well, makes sense not to run it right to the end if you're over water.
Yeah, but it's always that tough call, right? Because that's clearly when the animal do something super cool. You're like, oh.
Yeah,
dang
exactly.
it.
Hey, Mary, on your page, I noticed a lot of really cool images plus video, right? And I think we even mentioned it's decision, do you use your camera, your DSLR or mirrorless, whatever, or do you use your phone or do you use the drone? Kind of maybe just talk a little bit about how do you make that decision? And, where do you find yourself focusing more on video or photo, and, maybe why?
I would say, so maybe it's, gosh, that's such a great question. Probably it's situational, right? So for me, does this seem like something that is so spectacular that it needs to have the highest quality of video or photo quality? And so that probably drives the first decision. And then typically it's a waterfall for me. So if I've captured that content and I'm like, that is epic, that's awesome, then I might go down to my phone. Or there are times when you're exhausted and the only thing that you have the arm strength for anymore is your phone, or your phone's out of batteries. So sometimes I would say all the time it's situational, but typically my mentality is catch whatever it is, the most spectacular shots or images or videos on the strongest technology that you have, and then go down from there.
Gotcha. Yeah. I was just going to ask you maybe to expand a little more on, do you on the video versus photo side, do you find yourself leaning more towards video, or is that again just situational based off what you're seeing, or do you do the same thing? Like we find ourselves in the field, right? Often, because I'm a photo guy. Most of us here are photo guys. Ron's kind of more of a video guy. So I am going to take images first. And when I feel like I've got a really good image, then I might switch over and take a little bit of video. Okay. Whereas Ron might be in the mindset of he's going to take video until he gets a good sequence or whatever, and then he might switch over and take some photos. You know what I mean? I'm just wondering where you're at in that.
I would say I'm probably more like Ron, honestly. Video and then...
I'm sorry.
Hey, Mary, everybody wants to be. So.
Nice fast follow. I like it. I think it's tough because when I look back in reflection, I find myself being taken back to a moment better with the video because there's more that's captured. It's more senses. It's more sensory. I should say. The thing that I did though most recently is I actually bought an old school film camera. So for me now it's about, are you slowing yourself down enough to be in the moment to then create the image that you want versus a phone, which you can you can shoot off as much as the cloud can hold. So I don't know if that
That's a really interesting point. No, it's. I find myself even thinking a little bit about that lately, especially with how technology's come so far, right? I mean, on our cameras now, it's nothing to shoot 30, 40 frames a second.
Right.
And at that point, I mean, you're basically doing video, right? And it's like, why not just do video and take a still out? And then where's the challenge? You know, so I mean, I think to your point, maybe that's where some of this goes, is just it's a personal endeavor of maybe I want to shoot in single frame mode because I want to try to challenge myself to capture that moment, slow down, experience it all, and really try to capture that moment instead of just spraying and praying, you know. But I don't know. It was interesting. It's a good response.
Yeah, you get to a spot where you kind of walk yourself all the way back to, well, why are you doing this, right?
Right.
And then you get into a very theoretical spot if you want, but
no, absolutely. Yeah. I love it. That's the artist side of what we do, right? Really.
So. Yeah.
So when I first started following you, I think you were only around 20,000 maybe followers. So do you find that when you kind of switched and started focusing more on the video, is that when you experienced the growth to get you where you're at now at like 165,000 or something?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think oftentimes, like many companies or technology that comes our way, there's an advantage when you're the first mover, right? First mover advantage, if you've ever heard that terminology. And because I saw video was going to be a thing, and I thought, okay, why not, right? Because there was a lot of people at the time, I don't know if you guys remember, when they were pushing back, like, no, Instagram needs to be photos. It has to be photos. And so I kind of just said, okay, well, here we go. And that was, I think, even before TikTok, before COVID, which is kind of mind blowing when you think about it, just in terms of the timeline. But what I've found is there are certain videos that people are more attracted to. And I think we open up this conversation with, hey, those eagles, right? So I don't necessarily like to look at followers as an indicator for how good of a quality your content is. I think it's something that, people might like, or they might follow you because they either sense that they like whatever it is you're putting out at that point in time, but that doesn't mean they're going to always like what you want. So to me, followers used to be a stronger indicator of how engaged somebody was. But I think now it's less of that type of a metric. So yeah, I would say videos took my content up maybe in terms of visibility, but I wouldn't say in terms of engagement personally.
And how is your relationship with social media? I mean, what is I mean, that's real, right? It really is. It's individual for each of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you see the value in it, and how do you use that as a tool to benefit you?
Probably like most people say, right? They've had a love-hate relationship with it because it can be where it kind of hits on your ego, right? You've got a ton of great content and things that you think are just epic shots. Like, I love the whales. Like, that is my jam. I like whales all the way through and through. When you look at the content, nobody, in comparison to the two little eagles that sit outside, and I shouldn't call them little because they're quite big, but to the two eagles that sit outside that I can shoot standing from my balcony versus all the work that goes into going and even finding a humpback, right? Let alone getting something and bringing it back and editing and everything like that. They're very different in terms of people's responses. So it can make you feel like what you're doing isn't what it does, like it's not worth it. And I've had to just shut my eyes and say, you know what? It's worth it to me. And so for me personally, this is what I'm doing. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, cool. Like, that's, you do you, I'm going to do me. But there's absolutely that pull to wanting to get more likes, more whatever it looks like. So
Sure.
Love, hate.
Yeah.
And I've stopped posting all the time too, as you probably can tell. So
yeah, I'm in the same boat. I post once every week or two, if depending, that varies too, so yeah. It's just changed so much, and I don't do videos, so I'm not going to grow my account, and it's okay. I just share what I do and do me. But no, that's neat. That's neat. And it's awesome that you were able to grow your account. And I think the content there is awesome. People, that's why it's growing. I mean, give yourself a little bit of credit, I mean, it's You don't grow that way just because of, you posted a video. It's got to be good quality content too, in my opinion, for the most part. And you got an awesome page with a lot of really good content. So if you're not following Mary, you need to go check out her Instagram and give her a follow. It's especially if you're into the marine and the Alaskan, marine wildlife. It's really awesome. So.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a lot of great Alaskan content on there.
No.
And your eagles, I mean, again, I see what you're saying. You had 7 million views on the one. It's just so popular, which congratulations. That's awesome. But even more congratulations in staying your course for what you love to do and putting that out. And I can see the dance, the balance with, what we perceive as important. And it's different for everybody. What is the end game? What is the application of social media? Is it sharing with friends? Is it sharing with your audience? Is it to grow business? I mean, they're all very different approaches depending on the desired outcome. But first and foremost, I mean, for all creators out there, be you, put what you love to do and follow your own arc of creativity and development. And if your heart's where this marine mammals are, I can see the ease of the eagles. They're beautiful. And the audio you captured is phenomenal with them. And that makes sense why it was so popular. But I definitely love your whale stuff more, honestly.
You and me both, Mark.
The eagles are great. I'm not putting that aside at all. But to witness behavior with these highly intelligent marine mammals and watch and learn about them, it'd be so thrilling. And to have that window from the air to perceive, to witness that, it would be fun every single day. Because when would it ever get old? When would you learn everything that they're going to do, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think you talked about living somewhere that had an airport that made the lower 48 accessible. And I think what resonates with people with your page is you're making the inside passage of Alaska accessible just through your content. I think that resonates with people who maybe don't have the means, but they have the desire. And so to be able to experience that, through your lens, that's all of our goal, right? As photographers and videographers, let somebody experience the world through your lens at times. But I think that the lower 48 is in awe of Alaska for obvious reasons. But not enough people get up there. And you guys are probably saying, yeah, there's plenty. There's too many people get up here. But yeah, I think that's a huge draw. And whether it's we have eagles here, that's why for me, like what Mark was just saying, I think that for me is why the marine wildlife maybe resonates a little bit more and intrigues me a little bit more, because we have the ability to find the eagles, but we don't have a humpback anywhere in Wyoming. So that's never gonna, I always want to see that.
Cool. Well, it sounds like we're already creating a list for when you're up here. That's cool.
The list is long.
Yeah. Well, that was very kind of all of you. Thank you so much. But maybe the kind of questions back to each of you. I know, Jason, you mentioned quickly like why, your kind of relationship with social. But Ron, what about you?
Out of the three of us, I am the one that obviously does not care. Sometimes it's one or two a week. Sometimes it's once a month. It just depends on how busy I am. And I don't, I know there's ways to schedule posts and that kind of thing, but I don't take the time to do that. Mark is a very thoughtful editor. I try to slam dunk edit a trip as soon as I get back, as fast as I can. And then I'll find that I'll post 4 or 5 things, and then it's like, yeah, been there, done that. I don't want to keep going with that. So, but I do have a ton of video from recent trips that I've got to sift through, and we've got to make some content for the podcast YouTube page. So there's another question, and I know you're going to get to Mark with that same question, but have you gone the YouTube route?
I have not, but my husband has, and so he runs a pretty, a pretty small but successful fishing channel. So if you ever want to see me fishing versus photography, go on to his page, and you'll see us fishing for halibut and salmon, completely separate. But I have not gone to YouTube, so just star in his show is really what I'm saying.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's his page?
Yeah, what is it?
It's Captain Zach.
Captain
The
Zach.
Southeast Alaska fishing. Yeah. Yeah.
Check it out.
Captain Zach
think
and
he was,
Captain Jackson. That's the other one from Alaska. Water
Oh, yeah?
taxi. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that one out. Yeah.
Hey, Mary, you've heard the term post and ghost? I think
No, but I'm assuming, does that mean like post on social and ghost? Like then you don't come back?
just disappear. Ron kind of invented that. So
Oh. Nice.
That's a good descriptor.
Post and ghost. Is that a new hashtag as well? Maybe we should use that, Ron, in honor of you.
I should. Yeah. All this time I didn't know I should, but yeah, it's coming.
Yeah. But Ron, why do you ask specifically about YouTube? Is there something specific, or
just with the video content that you do, it seems like it would be a good fit. And I know there is the TikTok and that kind of thing, but depending on what the government decides to do with TikTok, that may be a thing of the past. We don't know.
Right. Right.
So YouTube just seems to be an easy way to monetize as well once you get to a certain stage. So, and early on, you're going to be able to buy a couple cups of coffee or maybe a breakfast roll, but
not both.
Not both. Definitely not
Yeah.
But that's why I wasn't sure if you had transitioned some of your content over to YouTube and
I feel like a couple years ago or a year ago, I guess maybe I took after you, Ron. I did a post and ghost, and because in my perfect world, I would create these marine documentaries, because the footage that you put on Instagram or something like that, right, is so quick that you don't actually get to see what the whale did. You just get to see the hot 5 seconds of it, maybe, if that. So I started to do that, and then I just ghosted. So maybe it's something I'll get into, but in a perfect world, yeah, it would be amazing to have that time to do that. Yeah.
Cool.
Mark? I could see that working, but it's a time commitment, right? The people who are successful at it, I mean, it will become a full-time job for those that are successful at it.
Exactly.
It's a choice.
But if you love it, maybe it's,
and people do. I mean, content creation is in one medium or another, it's what we all love to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's just strategizing where to invest your time and what application and going for it and hoping things catch. Hopefully something goes viral in that situation, goes viral and gets the followers that are required. But for me, I've been following your page for many years, and it's a bit of a community. It's fun to see what people are doing. And as Ron pointed out earlier, it's a portal to all these different lifestyles. In my opinion, and again, I'm only seeing a window of what you post. I'm not seeing the whole thing. So don't for a second assume I know what your lifestyle is like. But looking at that, it's wonderful to be able to see what you experience. And, that's what I enjoy most about social media when I'm on it, is seeing what other people are experiencing, and especially people that I get to know and have, and appreciate where they're at. And it's great to see other parts of the world. And Alaska is, a home away from home for me. So to see that is great. And there are all the other elements of social media and what everyone's purpose might be for it. But first and foremost, I enjoy that part. I like, Ron comes back from a trip, and even if he posts one and it's gone, it's nice to see. So same with Jason and everybody else. So it's but yeah, we all have different purposes for it, potentially, depending on our time and our investment, and whether it's to generate revenue and what's that worth, and then also just networking with people. But that's my quick 50 cents on it.
Yeah. And you bring up such a good point, which is like you have a window into somebody else's world, right? So you're looking at some of the whales or eagles in this case. But from your perspective, when do you start to flip into more of a lifestyle? Because it seems like there's this, what we typically do, which is photograph or share video of things externally that we're seeing. But there's so much of the other world, which is the opposite, right? It's take a look at what I'm doing, get to know me as a person. And so for you guys, like, what is a good, is there a good split? Or should it always be focused more on the external view or maybe just more internal?
So good. I like
That's a
that.
really good thought and question.
There's a big push to put out the best quality you can for best result back. And it would be, I would love it to be more of that balance, more behind the scene, more of the effort, more of the lifestyle.
Okay.
So think of it as a documentary or a video where the end is, here's the result, but this is what took place.
Right.
If we could morph our social media presentations to illustrate more of that, I'd enjoy doing that even more, because it's a more complete package than just the highlight image. This is what happened in the best light that day, 4 days into the trip. That's it.
Right.
Thanks for coming. Right?
The dance is over. Yeah.
You said it's a hot second or a hot 5 seconds. That's it.
Right.
But I think there's a significant portion of the audience would also enjoy all of the effort and things that were learned along the way, and the fumbles and the successes that were smaller leading up to it. Right. So, yeah, I think that'd be great to add that. It would take more time. I mean, we all film elements of our adventures, but it'd be, strategically being aware that this would make a good moment to show that it's not, there was a time on one of my hikes this year, I was guiding our guests and I was checking out a different bog for caribou and if they'd gone into it. And I followed this game trail and I said, okay, just wait here. I'm only going to go 150 yards so I can see this bog, save you the trouble. And there's often exposed dirt areas, which are a bit of a sinkhole that you navigate around. And the game trails usually do. And it's not a frequent problem. It's infrequent. But I was walking back and I put a little bit too much weight and went up to my thigh in the mud, and wanted to get the boot out. No, it's hilarious because it's like, is anybody getting this? And I jokingly said that because they could see me at this point and they're all laughing. And it's a humorous, fun moment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. No danger. I just might lose my boot. Who cares? But, I was able to get out. Nobody took the picture. And then at the end, I'm like, maybe that's okay. But it's that storytelling all along the way would, make for, I think, a more interesting end product for that caribou photo that happened, 2 hours later. Yeah. But it wasn't all perfect, right? It wasn't. Yeah. So that's a great question. I love that thought process you presented to us.
Yeah. It's a great response.
I think a lot of people, there's some accounts that really do that really well. You know what I mean? They're really thoughtful about when they're out in the field and taking just a minute, even if it's just with your phone, and doing some self-recording of some comments and take quick pics of things you're seeing, quick little videos, B-roll, whatever, and you can create this kind of a little, story. And I always have, Ron and I have talked about it multiple times, we always have the intentions of doing that when we go out in the field. And then, you get done at the end of the day and you were so focused on getting your images and video and you're like, we just did it. We missed it again. We didn't do any of it, And so I think it's the hard part for me is you have to be in that mindset all the time. You have to be in that mindset with the tools readily available and be thinking about what's that story you want to tell, why you're out taking photos and getting those images. And I think that's hard for me, but I think you're right. I think people really, really are drawn to that type of a story, so.
Yeah. And I like the insight you shared early on, as far as what quality is necessary to tell this story.
Yeah.
Because that can dictate which tools you use. We use GoPros a lot. if Mark's got some incredible footage of some caribou with GoPros, just these crazy shots of, because you kind of get predictive and put it in the way of their progress, and then just get out of the way and let them do their thing. And just, sometimes the magic happens. We get some good underwater stuff with the GoPros. They're great tools, and that's the quality sometimes that you need to tell a pretty neat story. So I appreciated that comment. Go ahead, Mark.
There's
Sorry.
still 11 other attempts where the caribou didn't walk past
Yeah,
the GoPro
exactly.
before that one
Yeah.
walked past. Or there were 3 attempts where 2 of them walked past and the third one knocked it over with its nose, or it's all that fun. But yeah, it's and phones are great, honestly. Now, I mean, the newer generation, I mean, I do so much on it. We publish magazine covers, 2-page spreads off my phone.
Oh,
We
wow.
can't zoom in, right? For wildlife, but for B-roll, for anything, for socials, the phones, they knock it out of the park now, and they're in our pockets. And we have guests coming more and more. It's still a minority, but who only bring a phone now, because they're not trying to sell a billboard. They're just documenting their trip, and they can do the various formats, stills, video, slow motion, whatever, with their phone. So it's interesting where that's going. I mean, who knows? It's developing quickly, but they're a great tool to create what Mary was talking about as far as telling story, rather than just the highlight image. That's cool. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, you kind of move from that aspirational world, like where of the beautiful shots you're getting, to you humanize it a bit more. And so to document that journey between the two, you almost wonder theoretically if you give up a little bit of that inspiration, but you also gain a lot more of that realism that I think, to your point before, Mark, people tend to crave. Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for indulging me. My question.
No, I love turning the tables. Not many guests do that and throw questions back at us. It's like, what's happening?
You're pretty natural at that. We had, I don't know if you've ever heard of Tim Irvin. Tim's a Canadian photographer. He does a lot just south of you in the Great Bear Rainforest. Cool. But Tim came on and interviewed us one time. So he was a guest, and then we had him back, and he turned the tables, and he led the interview, and it was good fun. So sometimes it's fun to be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, was it Mark who said earlier, you get to meet new people kind of through photography. And this is one of those great moments where, hey, you guys were just somebody who was a flat image on an Instagram screen, right, up until today. So it's super cool when something like this happens. So thank you for just creating this podcast and creating this opportunity to meet. Super cool.
Yeah, we feel very fortunate. Sorry, Ron, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But we feel very fortunate all the time. We get to meet so many incredible people and get to hear their stories. And selfishly, it's my favorite part of doing the podcast. It's not about anything other than just, sharing people's stories and getting to hear, how they got into photography and why they have the passion they do. And, so many people come into it from so many different walks of life and from so many different angles. It's always incredible to me to hear, how and why, so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's always an honor to have people like you on. So.
Yeah, it's not just the story behind the image, it's the person behind the image, I think. And that Beyond the Wild for us was multifaceted, but that was one of them. We wanted to get beyond just the image to the heart of the photographer that was taking the image or seeking the image out even.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where we're not successful, but that I think is important for us to all realize too, because it's a very competitive world. Mark's been in it the longest by far between the three of us. And I would say it's pretty safe for me to say that the world's completely different now than it was when he started. Now there's so many people out there capturing the images, and technology, as you alluded to earlier, is allowing that to happen more successfully. not just more frequently, but more successfully. A lot of great photographers. So to meet and interact and kind of in some ways get to know people from all different walks of life, I think that's what makes this pretty rewarding. And there's always times where you think, is this really what we need to be spending our time on? But it's pretty rewarding to get on and to visit and hear. Everybody's got a different story as to how they got into it, and to hear those stories. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but have we heard yours? Why did you pick up a camera?
I was just going to say, yep.
Oh, I feel like that's one of those basic foundational questions that we totally didn't talk about.
It should have been. You're right.
Yeah. I was giving you a hard time. So
we're just shaking it up. We're finishing where we should have started.
Right.
Right. Guessing.
Although, the good part is that we didn't hang up and then you thought of that. So
right, yeah.
Right on time. Let's see. So I've always loved photography. So this is going to date me a bunch, but I always used to look at the National Geographic magazines, the yellow borders in person, like the actual tangible thing, right? And I loved them, absolutely loved them. My grandpa used to just keep them all for me, stacks and stacks of them in his attic kind of thing. So I'd go through them all. So I've always loved the element of wildlife. And obviously National Geographic is more than just wildlife. But that being said, I picked up a camera when I was in undergrad, so at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it was an intro to photography class. And I think the professor's goal was really just to get you to look at things differently. So you'd have assignments like, take a photo from a worm's point of view. So something from like down low, right? So you just kind of get out of the way that you typically see things and look at things. And I didn't really do anything more with it until later on. And then I thought, okay, once I was starting to feel more inspired by like the Chicago architecture, and you're just trying to capture all of these lines, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's just no way. You can't show somebody else the way it's making you feel. When I started to work through that process, I just started to get a little bit slightly, I don't want to say better, but just look at things a little bit differently so that I could then showcase what I myself was absorbing. So that's kind of how I got started. Pretty lame. I have no technical background training, like nothing. Like I'm just kind of like your Joe Schmo out with the camera. So, that's me.
That's awesome. No, that's. Yeah. I don't have any technical training. I never took a photography course. Yeah. And most of the professionals I know didn't. It was animal behavior, or it was just the best tool. One of the best tools was studying. Yeah. Things like National Geographic magazine.
Yeah.
The inspiration, the composition, all of the elements. So. No, that's a fantastic story. And lines. Think about working with architectural lines. That's its own challenge. There's no question. And then you add elements of light to that. How does that change from 1 hour to the next? And what can you create? I mean, for people in cityscapes, there's so much that can be done, Yeah.
Exactly. And once you learn the technical aspects of a camera, right? Like your f-stops, your aperture, all these things, and you're like, oh, I have this thing that I can use to then be able to show something more, right? And that's, I think, why I went back to film.
Yeah, it was a very brief. We really need.
We glazed over it.
Let me rephrase that. I'd like to dive into that a little bit, because that was said quickly and not. I mean, I've heard of people doing it. I've bumped into one or two people shooting film in the field. But, the capabilities of digital, of mirrorless, of post-processing make it almost a sure thing, right? I mean, composition aside. So to go back to that, where you have to control elements more carefully, this is what you're doing for stills, for real.
Yeah. You're like, did you really go back how many years? Yeah.
That's cool. No, people are doing it. And well, look at it this way. I mean, and this isn't a bragging point. I'll give some perspective to this. I had an amazing fall. Please. I was away for months, trip after trip, a great year. The mirrorless camera I mean, I've had great cameras, but this is the best camera I've ever used. The results are great. I took 55,000 pictures over these trips, right?
Gosh.
Right? Which is
Yeah. My
great,
goodness.
but I've been home for 2 weeks and I've yet to edit because it's like, okay, whoa,
Yeah.
right? It's like, and I mean, I'm going to get into it. So my point in elaborating that story is this is where it's going, is high volume, relative certainty of images turning out. It's a matter of going through them all, finding the right ones, doing all the post-processing and high-fiving because it's a great time to be a photographer. The equipment, the technology is incredible. But it's high volume with this type of shooting, and one could dial back the frame rate, but that's risky business because it was some crazy action starts all of a sudden. You've dialed back to 5 frames a second, and it's like I wish I'd had 20 or 30 or whatever higher frame rate is possible
Right.
to get it. So you don't dial back, and then you get the volume, and it's fun to shoot, right? I mean, it's fun just to go so many pictures. So all that aside, here's a modern philosophy or perspective on where photography is.
Right.
You've made the conscious choice to slow it down and to focus and shoot film.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because it's a measurement of how intentional I am in the moment. And when I'm shooting with my phone, it's not as intentional. It's not as purposeful and in the moment. It is, I can like whip my camera out and be doing 70 things at once, right? So there's probably that aspect of it. There's another aspect of it, which is there's something human about being able to touch something and have something tangible. So what I do all day for work is all digital, right? Digital conference calls, digital PowerPoint decks, Excel documents at the wazoo, but you never walk away with even anything printed anymore. So to not be able to feel something in a different manner, and it's only ever eyesight and hearing, it's not as grounding for me. So I'd probably say that's probably the two top reasons. I guess I never really thought of it too much, which sounds ridiculous. I probably should have, but those are probably the two areas I'd say.
It's a conscious choice. So what are you using for film?
It is a Nikon. Oh gosh, I wish I had it by me. It's just a little Nikon. I think 35 millimeter. Just
right. But I mean, are you? I hope I'm not misunderstanding this. But so are you buying slide film or what?
Yeah, Kodak. Actually, give me 1 second. Which you can still find on Amazon, ironically. So it's not like I went back.
That's the trick of it too.
Yep.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Mark just had a flashback.
Yeah, like a Back to the Future moment. Where's the DeLorean here? What's
Do you think either any of you guys will go back into film at all, or not so much?
I've challenged people to do it. There's people out there that they want to believe, there's the pioneers of photography, and they would like to believe that they could have done it better. And, that image was so noisy or that, but they don't. That's a whole different set of technical skills.
Yes.
That no modern photographer has. If you've come into it within the last even 15, almost 20 years now, you probably don't have that skill set.
You didn't have to have it.
And so when people start shooting their mouth off like that, I said, I would challenge you. I said, I'll buy the film. You go and take nothing but that camera. You can have your lens, but nothing but that film camera and 36 rolls of Velvia film, and go out and recreate what they did there. Mm-hmm. Because those, some of those shots were done 40 years ago. Wow. And you didn't have any idea what you had. We have that instant feedback, and even more so on your phone, you get that instant feedback, but nobody had any idea what they had until they got back home after a trip where they'd focused on capturing that one image.
Right.
And I think it's a good challenge to people who think they could have done it better, to let them put their money where their mouth is and show me.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you know, when Mark first started, speaking of, this is going to date him, but when Mark first started, that was the reality of life, and that's what separated the two generations. Is now we all have this technology. We can go out and, you know, I was in Brazil a month ago and shot 27,000 images in 10 days.
Gosh.
And, you know, it was a lot of shooting from the water. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're familiar with that challenge. You're moving constantly. So, and low light, combined with low light. So you take more images in hopes that a few of them are sharp, because you know there's variables there that are going to prohibit you from being able to get a sharp image. So you just shoot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I've deleted like 22,000 images already. So it's, you know, that the volume thing that Mark was discussing earlier, that's exactly it. And you can definitely do it now. Anybody can go out and get lucky. But to be able to do that when you had to focus, like you're saying, on every exposure, on every instant, every characteristic that goes into each exposure, you know, that's a different animal. And I respect you for taking that on and kind of trying to sharpen your focus a little bit that way.
Yep. I would agree. I even wrote down your quote. It's a measurement of how intentional I am being. I really like that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's funny, you know, I said you could go to single exposure, right? And try to, you know, single shutter and try to challenge yourself that way. But even then you're not putting yourself in the same situation as if you were shooting film. And I've said it many times before. I kind of envy people like Mark that shot film and came up through that way. And because it's a whole different mindset. And I think you learn things by shooting that way that none of us will ever learn. So there's, you know, I never shot film in my time. So I really wish I had, honestly. I wish I'd have picked up a camera sooner and had learned through that process and learned the other aspects of photography. There's a guy I follow on TikTok, and not that it matters, his account's not whatever. He doesn't have a lot of followers even, but he uses, I don't even know what the technology is, but it's an old box camera that you bring the curtain over, and he uses a piece of glass with the liquid on it. And that's how he's capturing images. And it's just one shot, and he goes out and he frames it up, and it's usually just a lake with some trees or something scenic. And it's really cool watching him do it and watching him capture something. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and the frustrations and why. And, you know, it's intriguing to me, you know. That's back to the kind of the art side of things, right? But I'm with Ron and Mark. I give you a lot of kudos for challenging yourself with the film.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Definitely.
You guys are so kind. I don't know how to take all these very nice things that you're saying. Thank you.
Well, it's just making me question myself and you know, how intentional am I being? You know, this is like a psychology session for me. Yeah. So.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Oh, he needs it.
Oh, I need it. That's a fact.
So, how do you guys know each other?
Oh, we don't.
You just randomly,
Honestly, we all
history there.
Met in the field in different ways, and
okay, cool.
Mark and I met through a friend, and Jason and I actually met through the same friend and had Jason as a guest on the podcast, and then
cool.
have continued to shoot with one another for off and on for a few years now.
Sweet.
Same with Mark. Just got to shoot with him again for the first time in a long time.
Heck yeah. He's very excited about that.
We all were. It's fun to get out in the field together.
It's too short, but it was fun.
Yeah, that just through photography. I guess photography brought us all together.
Yeah.
in different ways, but
yeah,
that's
That's
the reality
awesome.
of it.
Cool.
And same with you. I mean, obviously didn't really know you until tonight and
Mhm.
listening to where your heart's at, but have been an admirer from afar with your work. And I love Alaska. There's so many, it's so big. People don't have,
It is.
people don't have any idea how gigantic Alaska is, but there's so much still to see. And Juneau and Ketchikan, those are
Oh my
two
gosh.
places that I would love to get to.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to having you guys up.
Yeah.
I mean it, seriously. It'll be fun. Be super fun.
I'm in.
Cool. We'll go
That,
out.
when's the best time to experience the marine life there? I mean,
Oh my
summer would
gosh.
obviously be the most the busiest season, right? But would that be when you'd recommend being there to experience orcas and humpbacks and everything that amazing coastal environment has to offer?
Yeah, so I am a sample size of one. So take what I say with a grain of salt and then go look it up because I'm probably going to tell you wrong. But in my experience, if you're looking to see orcas, which a lot of folks will want to see them, typically come up in like June, May, June, because that's when the Chinook are running, the king salmon, and that's what brings the orcas up. So humpbacks start showing up early, like April, March, April, and then so they're already here, and they're here. Generally speaking, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them in the Juneau area, so that's great. But the orcas are the ones that are harder to see or tougher to see. So, yeah.
There's one other thing that I can't wait. I mean, have to see Juno at some point.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to just a thought that occurred to me talking, and I won't stay with it for long. With the being intentional was just I've thought about this frequently this fall because our memory cards now are my it's like 512 terabyte. No, it's 512 gigabyte, which is like $200 now or less for something like that for CF Express, or I mean, even up to 2 terabyte card with like 22,000 images it'll hold, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a roll of film, you have 36, and then it has to be changed. How often does a photographer now let their memory card go down to 36 and not change it, right? Because something good could happen, but yet that's all we had to work with was 36, right? So I did a polar trip recently, and it was a very exciting trip. And my
Yeah.
memory card, I get down to like 300 pictures. I'm like, it's time to pull this baby out and put in a fresh card, right? But
Right.
it's like, wait a minute. Once upon a time, if I had 36, I was excited. It's like, so it's just different that way, and not better or worse. Just and I think everybody, I think healthy to reflect on how one shoots, and being intentional is something to reflect on for everybody.
That's a good point because when you have film and the 36, like you mentioned, you're shooting with from almost like a scarcity mindset. Whereas if you have just the digital cards and unlimited, you're really shooting with an overabundance mindset. So it's not even necessarily a growth mindset. It's just like there's so much of it, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a great point.
All
It's
right.
definitely something that would play into if you had 24 hours and you only had 36 images. What are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up good to get great? Or maybe great never comes because just like wildlife, you can't make it happen on time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
it was different. I mean, we had lots of, maybe took, I don't know, 100 rolls of film on a trip. It was a big trip, right? And it was all in a mesh bag. It had to be in its own bag through the airport so they could see it, clear canisters, all this stuff. So
Yeah.
we could switch out but it took time to switch a roll of film if something was happening. So it was, yeah, it's just it was more intentional because of that limitation in number and not this tremendous excess. But again, it creates a new editing challenge, because to go through, as Ron has just done, in 20 7,000, you deleted 22,000. Deleting 22,000 images still takes a lot of time, I think,
Oh
because
my gosh.
you're like, no, delete, 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 delete. Well, do that 27,000 or 22,000. So it's a new.
It takes a month.
To be exact.
To be exact.
Significant part to the process if you shoot very liberally to get it all, and it's hard not to if the technology allows it.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been a very cool. I mean, I love all the ocean content that you do and the story and what we've heard on this podcast with you about that. But this has been a very interesting turn to look at somebody as successful as you and in the position that you're in, making the choice to do this as well, to slow that down and to shoot with film is something new. As far as the podcast goes, I mean, I've bumped into a couple of people, but it's not common. So, but it causes pause. So, yeah, it's been very interesting to hear that. And I have no, when I shook my head that I wouldn't go back to it, it's only because the technology is so advanced and our trips are so important. If we travel somewhere and take the time to do it and money to do it, to be able to shoot at 1,000 ISO instead of 50 for low light, I'm gonna have to take the 1,000 and get the shot.
Touche. I get it.
Big
so
props, big respect for that, for sure. For sure.
We need to call Colin at Picture Line and have them throw that up as a challenge. You've got a 1 day 36 exposure challenge.
That would be cool.
See what you can come back with.
Yeah. One more thought. I'm sorry. I know we're dragging this on and we appreciate you letting us take your time, but
this is awesome.
Yet it really has hit me, as Ron was talking about what it took to get an image back in the day. And the one that I always think of is Mangelson's image of the fish in the mouth. And I just don't think, almost anybody can go up there now and get that image and get very close to something that's similar. But I don't think, people just don't understand what it took back then to be able to capture that moment. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of, it's kind of sad that all that is just lost in the mix now. People look at images and there's a dime a dozen and everybody can do it. And it's so easy now. And there's, like Ron said, there's a lot of people out there getting really good images, so it's kind of sad really to think that the accomplishment of what those photographers were able to achieve is kind of lost in the mix now, but I don't know, just a thought. But
it was always a huge celebration when the slides came back and the shot you were hoping for was the image of the trip, and you looped it and it was sharp and everything. It's like,
right. I can only imagine.
There's so many you'd loop and they'd go right over the shoulder onto the floor. One of my best friends who followed me through my career, I had garbage bags of slides. It was just the nature of the business. Wow. Right. But when those shots turned out, the timing, everything, it was
absolutely. And now all I do is hit the little magnifying glass and look through my viewfinder, go yes or no.
It's because you're getting the shot. It's just that there was no waiting. Now, there was a separation. It was a week after getting back. Even courier out the exposed film would be processed and then couriered back. And it taught, for better or for worse, it was required patience. Yeah. It wasn't an instantaneous result or success or guarantee. There was no guarantee till it came back. You were using the best equipment, the best film for the situation. But photography, again, it's there's never been a better time to be into photography with the equipment and technology we have now. But there is something to be said for the separation. You'd shoot it, you'd walk away from it. It's like a 9 to 5 job. 5 o'clock, I took it, it's done, I'm leaving. With slide film, you took the picture, there's nothing more I can do. I can't see it, I can't question it. In a week, I'll find out whether I did it properly. And that patience doesn't happen a lot in our world nowadays. A Everybody wants results now and communication now. And I find that I love communicating with people on all different platforms. I really do. But there's a lot of communication. So, the odd time, if I don't reply within 24 hours, that's not ignoring. Who knows what everybody's life is like, right? For a day or two. But that's the world we live in, is so accessible, has its benefits, but patience was something that shooting film did teach as well, because you had to just walk away from it and hope for the best after that was taken, the image.
And the joy you felt when you did get an image that you thought you did on film versus the joy you feel now when you get an epic image digitally, is it the same?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think because the rarity of an epic image is still rare, right? There's still the natural light. There's still the animal behavior, being there at the right time. All of those elements are just as rich as they were to have the experience. So the image still takes us instantly to that experience, that crazy moment in time that we were there for. Mm-hmm. Whether it was waiting a week to see it and hope it turned out, or the immediate, it's still very rewarding. And it's still, if, as with all photographers, our favorite images, we get done up and it takes us back. So the medium of film versus digital or DSLR to mirrorless or any of that not the highlight reel stuff. It doesn't. It's more the process is so different. Mm-hmm. And now it's, again, just in reference to that polar bear trip, sparring polar bears for, a day and a half. Wow. It was like, there's so many images. It's like going through the volume and picking the 5 best ones kind of thing is different than with the slide film, where I would have taken, 500 pictures, not 5,000, if that even. And so I think it's just as rich for the highlight reel. It's just the process and volume is different.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Cool.
Thanks a ton, Mary.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been great.
Appreciate you letting us visit with you, and tell Captain Zach thank you for giving up a little bit of time this evening as well. For sure. Well, hopefully I see you guys up here next year. Or this, I guess next year. Cool. Can't wait.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.